Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are diving into the really fascinating story of how LangChain, a huge name in AI tools, had to basically tear down and rebuild their own chatbot. Why? Because, get this, their own expert engineers weren't even using it.
The whole thing kicks off with this surprisingly honest confession from the LangChain team themselves. I mean, can you imagine that? You build this amazing tool to solve a problem, and then you find out the very people it's meant for have just gone and created their own workaround?
And that leads to the big question, right? If your own experts, the people who know your products inside and out, are avoiding your tool, what's really going on? That's the kind of thing that makes you stop and really question everything you thought you were doing right.
Now, the issue wasn't that the chatbot was just, broken. It worked. It gave answers. But when you got to the really tough, gnarly, real-world questions, the stuff their engineers were dealing with every single day, like, hey, why isn't streaming working in production? The answers were just thin. They just weren't good enough.
See, to solve these super complex problems for users, they needed way more than the official docs. They needed to know what was happening in the real world, and even more, what the code itself was actually doing. So what did they do? They built their own process. A manual one, sure, but one that was way more reliable.
Okay, so what was this manual process? What were the experts doing instead of just firing up their own chatbot? Well, it turns out they had this kind of ritual. A super smart 3-step process to get the full picture every single time.
And here's how it worked. Step 1, they'd hit the official docs, to get the official story on how a feature is supposed to work. Then they'd dive into the knowledge base, basically all the old support tickets, to see if anyone else had run into the same problem. And finally, for the absolute undeniable ground truth, they'd go straight to the source, the codebase itself. So the LangChain team sees their engineers doing this dance, this 3-step ritual, over and over all day long. And then bam, the light bulb goes on. They thought, wait a minute, what if we stop trying to be clever and just automate that? The exact thing our smartest people are already doing. And that's exactly what they did. They built this new thing they called a deep agent. Think of it like this. You have a main agent, like a project manager, and that manager has 3 specialists working for it. One's an expert on the docs, another is a pro at the knowledge base, and the third one knows the code base inside and out. Each one does its thing, finds the good stuff, and only passes up the most important insights. And guess what? It worked! Big time! Their engineers absolutely loved it. The new tool gave them these amazing, comprehensive answers that pulled from the docs, pointed to old support tickets, and even highlighted the exact lines of code that were causing the problem. It was a total game changer, saving them hours of debugging time every week. Okay, so this huge internal win got them thinking. It led them to this really critical insight about why their public chatbot just wasn't cutting it. And the culprit? It all came down to its complete reliance on this one technique that pretty much everyone was using, vector search.
You see, the way vector search usually works is you take your documents, you chop them up into little pieces, and you create these things called embeddings. But for LangChain's highly structured docs, this was a disaster. First off, it just obliterates the structure. All that context from headers and sections, gone. Second, their docs were updated daily, which meant they had to constantly re-index everything, and that's super slow. And finally, the citations it gave were so vague. Users couldn't even check where the answer came from. It was a mess. This slide really nails the huge shift in their thinking. They basically moved from a dumb search bar model, just finding text that looks similar, to a skilled librarian model. Someone who doesn't just find keywords, but actually understands the layout of the entire library and knows exactly where to look. And this all boiled down to one super powerful design principle. Your tools should mirror how a human actually finds information, not just how some fancy algorithm works on paper. So, what does that actually look like in practice? Well, this is where it gets really cool. Take the knowledge-based search, for example. The new agent doesn't just go in and start reading everything it finds. No, it's way smarter than that. It uses this awesome 2-step method: scan, then read. First, it just scans. It grabs a whole bunch of article titles, maybe dozens of them. Then it identifies the 2 or 3 that look the most promising, just based on the titles. And only then does it actually read those few articles in full. This is so smart, right? It stops the agent from getting totally bogged down in useless information. And if you thought that was cool, the code-based search tool is even more impressive. Why? Because it's a direct copy of that human workflow we talked about at the beginning. It's like having a little robot engineer on your team. So check this out.
First, it uses a super fast tool called ripgrip to search for code patterns. Then, to get its bearings, it uses a command like tree to see the whole file structure and understand where things are. And finally, it zooms in and reads the specific code right down to the line numbers. It's exactly what a human developer would do.
So, after this whole journey, this whole rebuild, what are the big lessons here? What can we all learn about building AI agents that people will actually want to use? Well, the LangChain team boiled it all down to a few key takeaways for the rest of us.
Okay, lesson number 1, and this is the big one. Follow your users. Find out what your experts are already doing to be successful and just automate that workflow. And, super important, really think twice before you just default to using vector embeddings. Ask yourself if it's really the right tool for the job. Often, it's better to give the agent direct access to the data's existing structure. That way, it can reason about the information, not just retrieve it.
And the last big lesson is one for anybody building stuff for the real world. Having a brilliant agent design is great, but it's not enough. You absolutely need robust, production-ready infrastructure to back it up. We're talking guardrails to handle weird questions, retries when things fail, fallbacks if a model goes down, and caching to keep costs from spiraling. That's the stuff that makes a tool reliable, not just a cool demo.
So this entire story really leaves us with one last, powerful question to ask about our own projects. Are we building an agent that actually works like a human expert, something that can navigate and reason? Or are we just building a slightly fancier search bar? Because as LangChain found out the hard way, that difference is everything.